So since 2020, there has been an ever increasing rolling story of waterways and beaches in the UK becoming more and more polluted. Now, first of all, you've got to ask the question, why? What happened? Well, it's obvious. We left the EU. We left a lot of these EU institutions, which would pretty much be responsible for enforcing the laws, making sure that those water companies are actually doing what they're told. And then, of course, not being in the EU, they're not part of the sort of the court system anymore, where those companies, those sort of regulatory bodies can then take the water companies to court and then fine them and hold them accountable. So, what do you think has been happening since 2020? Well, all these water companies are now like, well, we're no longer in the EU. We don't have to be worried about being taken to court. And if you may remember, just a couple of weeks ago, where we went over the fact that the UK's new medical regulator is so underfunded and so understaffed, it is buried under a mountain of paperwork in trying to essentially approve new drugs. It is falling massively behind. Even when it is just going, okay, if the EU's approved it, yeah, boom, boom, rubble stamped, go. It's so behind, it's delaying vital medicines that people need. And as we always said, when this would happen, because it always would happen, there's a ton of other regulatory bodies that are now chronically underfunded, chronically understaffed, for the exact reason that the Tories do not want to hold these businesses and companies accountable because, well, they hate regulations. And who are these people that they're defunding and not fully staffing? Well, these are pretty much the regulation police. And yesterday, you saw probably a lot of Conservatives tweeting about the fact that they have voted to protect rivers and your waterways, whereas apparently Labour and the Lib Dems voted against it. However, this is just an absolute Tory smokescreen. So before we go into telling you just what exactly happened yesterday in this regard and why this is just a complete and absolute smokescreen and is basically peak Conservative incompetence, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. So, how did this all first come about? What happened? Well, first of all, Labour and the Lib Dems have pretty much recognised that this in itself has become a rolling story, and the fact that the Tories are refusing to hold water companies accountable and even pass the type of laws that are necessary to hold them account. So they brought in basically a ton of regulations that are going to, well, basically keep our rivers and beaches clean from all the sewage and the discharge and hold, importantly, water companies account. That was what was important, because it was not only just the fact that, hey, water companies, you have to follow these regulations. It was also, if you don't, there will be consequences. So this bill that they wanted to pass with a what was essentially a opposition day motion had teeth. It had some serious teeth that would have held water companies to account for, well, essentially their failures to, well, keep rivers, waterways, and beaches clean. So what happened? Bear in mind, this is an opposition day motion. And of course, as we've said before, the Tories have a big majority. And this is what they did. They used a very old parliamentary trick called seizing the motion, or at least seizing the workings, I believe it's sort of officially called. But essentially, it means that at that point, the government took control. So the Labour bill wasn't even entered into sort of the official record. What essentially they then want to do was pretty much copy and paste all the work that had been done by the Labour Party, except for one point. And of course, I think you already know which point it's going to be. It was the point that would make sure that this bill had teeth, that those water companies would be held to account. They kept all those other regulations about monitoring sewage discharge, making sure that the equipment and stuff is regularly maintained and checked, and all this type of stuff that would have led to less pollution of rivers and beaches that we have seen. And trust me, you're going to see more of these pictures certainly in the coming months because, as I said, this is becoming very quickly a rolling story. This is happening every year now. And so what happens? Well, they took all that and then removed that vital clause that, as we said, holds the water companies to account. So the Conservatives put this bill forward, entered it into the record, and then Labour went, hold on a second, you've missed that one point. As did the Lib Dems say, hey, you've missed this point where it actually holds the water companies to account. And they tried to put in an amendment to put that back in the bill. But of course, what did the Tories do? They voted it down. They voted against that. But of course, they voted in the bill entirely. Hence, you saw last night on Twitter pretty much every single Tory MP crowing about the fact that the Conservatives had voted to protect rivers and beaches, but the Lib Dems and the Labour Party had voted against it, wanting to pollute your beaches and rivers. But in reality, the exact opposite has happened, because while they have brought in all these protections, there is absolutely nothing in the bill that says that these water companies have to follow those regulations, because they've taken the teeth from the bill, rendering effectively this bill completely and absolutely useless. Now, of course, there is a chance that in the House of Lords, the Lords may go, oh yeah, we can see how toothless this bill is. Yeah, we're just going to put that back in. And it's highly probable that Labour peers and certainly Lib Dem peers in the House of Lords are probably going to gear up to put that amendment in the bill to make sure that it goes in. Now, of course, will there be some more sort of parliamentary procedure or procedure in the House of Lords that the Tories will try and sort of once again sort of take that out of the bill? Yeah, absolutely. But the fact that many Tories yesterday crowed about how vital it was that they had protected rivers and everything like that, well, I say this: if you've got a Tory MP, ask them why they voted against the amendment and even took control of the business of the House that day to remove an amendment that would basically force well, at least hold the water companies account and make sure that they were following the rules that they had just passed. Because, this is like this is like having two fields with sheep in one field and then saying, well, we don't want the sheep to go into the other field just yet, and then building a fence and then not putting the gate in. So even though you built this fence, there's no gate. So the sheep are just passing through from one field to the other because there's nothing stopping them. This bill was effectively, completely, and absolutely toothless. But they're crowing about it as if they've achieved some massive moral victory. In reality, they haven't. And it's going to look even more hilarious when, once again, we start to see more of this sewage discharge, because we're going to see more of them. And yet, it should be caught on very quickly what the Tories have done here is pass an absolutely toothless bill, because as always, the Tories do not like regulation. They do not like the police of those regulations, hence why they have underfunded them and understaffed them, and have crippled these organizations that are meant to protect the regulations that Parliament puts in place, or in this case, when we're in the EU in some cases, hence why we should also be worried about the EU sort of retained EU law bill, but that looks like that's dead, thank God. Needless to say, this was not a moment for many Tories to be crowing, because there is going to be, as is always, every summer, we are going to get videos, pictures of all this sewage being dumped in to the rivers and lakes. And it's like, hey guys, didn't you just vote to end all this? Oh, that's right. You took out a very crucial piece in that bill, which was in the original Labour variant, which was that it would hold water companies to account. Nothing in the bill you guys just passed holds the water companies to account. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee. And of course, there's a YouTube thank you button and the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.